Okay, welcome to Homeschooling in PA. If you don't know me, my name is Kate Turnipseed. I'm the director of Mosaic Homeschool Co-op out of Pottstown, Pennsylvania. We're just going to go over some things with homeschooling in PA. It can feel intimidating, especially your first time or even second time going through the process. So we're just going to go over first from a very far view, and then we're going to zoom in and look at things more specifically. If there are any questions for the duration of this, please feel free to interrupt me and ask. I will have a question section at the end, but sometimes it's helpful to ask your question. Someone else might have the same question. So feel free to interrupt me on any of the slides, and we will go through it. So welcome to Homeschooling in PA, Mosaic Homeschool Co-op. Again, my name is Kate Turnipseed. Let's get started. Okay, Pennsylvania is considered a high regulation state. There are 4 high regulation states in the United States. They're all in this general area. It's Pennsylvania, New York, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. What does that mean? It means that we have a very specific law that tells us how we must homeschool. It tells us what we need to file with our school districts and what the school districts can ask of us. What it doesn't mean is that it's prohibited. It doesn't mean that we can't homeschool in Pennsylvania. It doesn't mean that it's so crazy homeschooling in Pennsylvania that it's just too hard. Now, the law was created in 1988. It is section 1327.1 of the PA School Code, if you need to look it up. The best place to get information is the law. It is written in legal language, so there is some reading it about 10 times is okay. It is a legal program. Why did they create this in PA? Prior to 1988, particularly around the 1986, there were a lot of school districts suing homeschool parents for their right to homeschool. On top of that, there is a large Amish population in Pennsylvania that homeschools, and there were a lot of questions about whether or not they were actually educating their children rather than just having them work the family farm. So it's twofold why it's a high regulation state. First, it protects us as homeschooling parents because it tells the school district exactly what they can and cannot do. And school districts often do not read the law 10 times, so they don't know what they can't ask for. But it also protects the kids. It makes sure that all your kids are receiving a proper education. It doesn't say that it has to be what PA thinks is a proper education, but it requires that the kids are learning something throughout the year to help grow them. So what are the homeschooling options in Pennsylvania? Under the general homeschooling statutes, there are 2 options. We're really going to be focusing on the first, which is what the majority of the room is going to be homeschooling under. Option 1 is homeschooling under that homeschool statute, the 1327.1 statute. That is what almost everybody in this room will and is required to homeschool under. There's also option 2, which is homeschooling with a private tutor. This is for any parents that have a teaching degree. You can actually homeschool under this and consider yourself the private tutor for your children if you have a Pennsylvania teaching degree and you don't have these filing requirements. There are different requirements that we're not going to get into today. I would say about 90% plus will homeschool under this option 1. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Okay, compulsory attendance ages. Big scary word, compulsory. What that means is if your child is 6 years old, by September 1st, they need to be in some sort of school program. That can include public school, private school, an online charter program, which falls under public school a lot in PA. Virtual charter school is considered a public schooling program, or homeschool. They just need to be receiving some sort of educational program at that age. If you go online, you might Google it, you might see some sites that still say 8 years old. This was changed in 2018, I think, to be age 6 and above. It's compulsory age. We do fall under that. That means if your child was born on September 2nd, you do not need to do any sort of homeschooling or any sort of schooling that year. That's technically under the statute. You don't need to file. I personally started my daughter earlier. I just didn't file with the school district. But age 6, by September 1st of the year, they have to be enrolled in some sort of program. Whether that is a homeschooling program, which you decide, we'll go over what constitutes like a homeschooling program, and that's whatever you decide it is. But they do need to be doing some sort of appropriate school. You do need to file paperwork appropriately, and we will go over that as well. Okay, so a how-to overview. So first you need to file an affidavit or unsworn declaration. We're going to get into all of this on separate slides. Teach required subjects, keep records, which is your portfolio, annual evaluation. These are the 4 main components of what you are doing as a homeschooling parent in Pennsylvania. We are going to dig into each of these. Are there any questions leading up to this point before we start digging into like the nitty-gritty of what homeschooling is? Cool. Okay, so filing to homeschool. You have 2 choices in Pennsylvania as of April 2020. You can file an affidavit. An affidavit must be notarized. Most people do not do that anymore because it must be notarized. You can also file an unsworn declaration. Now, if you read the homeschooling law, it does not say unsworn declaration. We can file an unsworn declaration under the Uniform Unsworn Declaration Act, Chapter 62 of the PA Consolidated Statutes, if you need to quote it at anybody. What that means and what it says in that law is unless otherwise stated within that chapter, any time that a Pennsylvania statute requires an affidavit or a notarized document, you can instead do an unsworn declaration. It supersedes the need of only doing an affidavit. So everyone I know does an unsworn declaration now because you don't need to get it notarized. It does require the same standard things that an affidavit would require. So it's the same basic document, but instead you make a statement saying, I swear that everything I put in here is true. There we go. Okay, per law, either your unsworn declaration or affidavit needs to be filed with the superintendent of your school district, either by certified mail or you can hand deliver it. If you're going to hand deliver it, you want to get a receipt. I usually write my own that says I'm going to have a line of my school district, and I'm not going to say what my school district is because this is going on YouTube. My school district has received the following paperwork for my child's name, and then I have a check mark, and then I have them sign it. My school district actually has their own receipt system. So I always prepare it just in case, but they actually, when they receive the paperwork, they flip through it with me there, and they hand me a receipt. So I have the date, and it goes in my CYA folder for homeschooling. So I know they've received it. The law does say send it certified mail. You can personally deliver it. Now the superintendent is almost never going to be the one who receives your paperwork. But if you are addressing it certified mail, you do want to address it to the superintendent, and where they send it is their own business from there. Your job is to send it to the superintendent. What they do, the secretary gets it and files it in the homeschool folder, or some schools have a homeschooling coordinator that the superintendent has decided is going to handle that paperwork. It doesn't matter. You did your job by sending it to the superintendent of that school. Okay? Okay, lots of scary things. That isn't going to look that scary when we go to the next slide, because I send the same thing every year, but just updated dates. Supervisor's name. You're going to hear me say the word supervisor a lot. That's the parent in charge of the homeschooling. So that's all of you. So that's usually mom, sometimes it's dad. Okay? Name and age of each child being homeschooled. You don't need to put what grade they're in. The school kind of decides what grade they're in based on their age. Okay? So Emma, even though she's doing 3rd grade this year, is 2nd grade age. So I follow 2nd grade requirements for that school, which means she doesn't need to take a standardized test this year because they only base it on the age. You don't need to declare, I'm doing this grade. A lot of homeschoolers don't follow specific grades. Okay, so age. Home address and telephone number. Subjects are being offered in English. Very complicated statement. You have to say, I will be offering these subjects in English. Okay? An outline of proposed educational objectives by subject area. I'll show you mine that has been accepted with 2 different school districts in this area. We moved from one school district to the other school district about a year ago. Evidence that the child has been immunized. This is a conflict of interest currently in Pennsylvania. A new law was passed in the health department about a year and a half ago now, saying that the school must have on record all immunizations of of every school-aged child. The people who wrote that law didn't bother reading the homeschool law. So now there's an argument going on about which supersedes which. So some school districts are requiring that you hand in your immunizations. HSLDA will tell you you don't have to. HSLDA has actually won one lawsuit. They settled out of court after the school district realized they were going to lose. And they have settled a bunch of others before it even got to a court filing because of this. But your school district may ask you for immunization records. By law, you don't have to supply them. It's your decision whether or not you feel you want to argue with them. I'm not the supervisor or the parent of your homeschooling program. I'm not going to suggest either way whether you argue with them or not. But by homeschooling law statute, you just need to say, my child has been immunized. Or we have a exception under whatever code you want to have an exception under. That is the homeschooling law. Again, there is a conflict there, and I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to advise you either way. So you do need to say that the homeschool program will comply with the provisions of this section, that's the 1327.1, and that the declaration will be satisfactory evidence thereof. You're really just going to say that. That this is enough evidence for you. This is the first 2 pages of Emma's. This is from the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. I send the same thing every year. What I change is the age. The same thing. This is a form. If you're a member of HSLDA, you can print this right off their system. So it has the school district. It has my name, my daughter's name, and the age when I filed this. It has our home address and phone number. It says that I'm going to comply with the statutes. That's number 2. 3, all the subjects listed in the next paragraph will be offered in English. 4, I'm going to be teaching all these following subjects at the elementary school level and all these subjects at the secondary level. So I can use this through high school because I list all of it. 5, they will be attached. I have attached to this document what my goals are in each of those topics. You'll see how specific or not they are. 6, that they've been immunized with all this. These are the things, these are the different immunizations listed under a different code, or I have a medical exemption. So that they are receiving any sort of medical care, dental exam. So I'm attesting to the fact that I do all this. I don't need to provide records unless you feel like arguing with the school district. I declare that no adult living in the home has done any of these horrible things that have broken the law. Homicide, assault, stalking, kidnapping, restraint, anything to a child, anything that I don't want to put on YouTube because I will get in trouble if I say some of these things on YouTube. All these bad things. The bad things continue. I list them all so that there's no question about whether or not I have read the law. The more thorough you are with this, the less they will feel the need to question whether or not you know what you're doing. I then say this unsworn declaration was authorized under that statute that I mentioned before in lieu of an affidavit required by the homeschool law. I declare under perjury of law that this is true and correct. Great. These are my very specific educational objectives. I've submitted the same thing for 3 years now. English, we're going to read a variety of genres of literature and various forms of writing. We're going to improve on spelling, grammar, reading, and writing skills. That will happen. Arithmetic, we're going to improve on computational skills and math facts. Don't really say what those are. We're going to master new topics as I decide to introduce them. History, we are going to increase knowledge of American and Pennsylvania history. We're going to study historical topics of interest. Geography, we're going to improve math skills, increase knowledge. Science, explore new concepts and topics. Safety, fire safety. You need to make sure you talk about fire safety every year. Health, we're going to talk about items related to health and hygiene. Eat your broccoli. Okay? Physical education, we're going to incorporate exercise into the weekly routine. Emma does dance. Okay? We're going to allow the student freedom to exercise outside, weather permitting. Music and art, we're going to increase the appreciation for music and art as forms of expression. We're doing that by listening to K-pop Demon Hunters nonstop currently. We did the same thing with Wicked last year. Okay? This is acceptable. This is the list of things we are doing. I'm not saying I'm read these 100 books before they are 13. I'm not saying we are going to work on multiplication and division. We are going to improve upon the student where they are. Okay? Any questions while I have these documents up? Cool. I do have listed on the top the required outline of proposed education objectives shall not be utilized by the superintendent in determining if the homeschool education program is out of compliance with this section and section 1327. That means that they can't take this and decide whether I'm doing enough or not. That is in the homeschool statute. I include that so that if there's ever a question of, these are not very specific, I can go, well, you're not allowed to tell me that. Okay? So I include these things because it stops communication. I have a very good relationship, believe it or not, with my school district. I had a very good relationship with my last school district. But I make their work really easy for them. I introduced them to a new statute last year because I moved to their school district, and they went, oh, this is good to know. Thank you for printing out the statute and highlighting it for me. And that's how that went. So I give them everything that they would need to know so they don't question me. Okay. Homeschooling 101. What do you need to do in elementary school? English, spelling, reading, and writing, arithmetic, science, geography, history of the U.S. and PA, civic, safety education with, quote, regular and continuous instruction in the dangers and preventions of fires, health and physiology, physical education, music, and art. What do you need to do annually? Fire safety. What else do you need to do annually? Nothing else. Okay? So, English, are we really working on spelling this year? Not really. I mean, we're doing it through reading, but we're not focusing on it. That's fine. Somewhere between kindergarten and 6th grade, I need to sit down and work on spelling with my daughter. It's not an annual requirement. The only thing that's regular and continuous, and is listed in the law as regular and continuous, is the instruction in dangers and preventions of fires. Mosaic Homeschooling Co-op goes on every year a field trip to a fire department where we get specific instruction on fire safety. That is sufficient to be covered in this law. Take pictures of it, print it out, put it in your portfolio. If you want, have them do one of the coloring sheets or write something. Put it in their portfolio. It proves that they did fire safety this year. So there's plenty of pictures from our trip. If you were on it, go steal one off our Discord server that has a child in it. Put it on the top of the page, list what they did, and print it and stick it in your portfolio. Okay? This is the elementary school. Again, everything in here needs to be done sometime between kindergarten and 6th grade level. It's amazing that they include kindergarten on here because kindergarten is not required under Pennsylvania state law, but that's the way it's listed in the law, so that's what we went with. Okay? It gets slightly more thorough for secondary level. English, language, literature, speech, and composition, science, geography, social studies, civics, world history, history of the U.S. and PA, mathematics, general math, algebra, and geometry, art, music, physical education, health and safety education, quote, including regular and continuous instruction in the dangers and prevention of fires. So, what do we need to do annually? Fire safety. What do we need to do annually other than that? Nothing else. Okay. History of U.S. and PA. Luckily, the history of U.S. is very tied to the history of Pennsylvania, so you can get two birds with one stone if you decide to talk about Independence Hall or go tour anywhere in Philadelphia. We covered Pennsylvania history by covering the Lenape this year in Mosaic Homeschool Co-op. That does count at some time, going back a slide, between 12th K and 6th grade, you covered Pennsylvania state history. You technically never need to do it again. Okay? Doesn't mean you should. It just means you don't have to. Okay. Graduating from a homeschool program in high school, so this is 9th through 12th grade, you need 4 years of an English program, 3 years of a mathematics program, 3 years of a science program, 3 years of social studies, 2 years of arts and humanities. Okay? Okay. This is fun. This saves you money. Homeschoolers in high school are eligible for dual enrollment at Montgomery County Community College. It is including their Pottstown campus, which is about 5 minutes down the road from where we are currently. The cost is $230 per class, not credit. $230 per class. If any of you have been looking at a college invoice recently, it is currently about $2,000 plus for a credit. So $230 per class for Montgomery County residents. I think it's about $500 per class for non-Montgomery County residents. Plus the cost of books and supplies. Students must be 15 years of age or older unless evaluated and exception is made. There was a student, I think it was Telford, who is in a college program at the age of 10 currently because they are on a genius scale. So they are homeschooled and they are going through a college program. Other colleges do offer similar programs. I just know that Montgomery County Community College does offer this. We fall under their cooperative program with other high schoolers. So they could technically graduate from a homeschool program with their associate's degree through community college. Let's talk about how we give a diploma, high school diploma, very complicated system. You print one out online and you sign it as the supervisor. Okay? As long as the supervisor says they have done all their required work and you sign off on it, they can get their high school diploma. By state law, it's required that everywhere accept that as an official diploma. You can technically go through an outside source to have them issue a diploma. Pennsylvania is required to keep a list of those associations that can also issue diplomas. But you as the supervisor can sign off on that. Okay, curriculums. The supervisor chooses the curriculum for the child. There's no such thing as an accredited curriculum in Pennsylvania. I see that a lot on Facebook. I need an accredited curriculum. There's no such thing. The school district does not need to approve your curriculum. That is not their job. They don't even need to know what curriculum you're using. You saw the full I'm going to homeschool document I send in every year for Emma. It has a lot of words on there, and most of it is a direct copy from the law. You can use multiple curriculums or write your own, or some combination. You can choose not to use a particular curriculum. Homeschool law does not require a certain type of curriculum be used. All Pennsylvania wants to know is that you are somehow educating your child so that they can go into the real world eventually and be a good member of society. So this is all up to you. The curriculum is all what's up to you, and every child is different. Okay, we are a secular homeschooling co-op. So that means I need to go over what is secular, neutral, and religious. This is not me making a statement on what is better or what you should use. This is not me making any sort of statement that one curriculum is much better than the other curriculum, okay? That said, a secular curriculum is going to look at things from a purely scientific viewpoint. It uses modern scientific theories to explain topics like evolution, geological age of the earth, so not young earth. They typically take a worldwide view, so it's very cultural studies. You might be studying mythology from around the world, different cultures around the world, and how world history is interconnected instead of focusing on a specific region of the world. A neutral curriculum. It tends to look at things from a scientific viewpoint, but avoids the hot button topics like evolution. Okay? It may gloss over these topics, not include them at all, or give a rudimentary science description of the topics. It's trying not to offend anybody. Okay? So it can take a worldwide view, but often focuses on Western Europe and North America. A religious curriculum tends to look at things from a biblical viewpoint. It uses biblical language or points to the Bible. Our curriculum is a religious curriculum. It actually would fall under the neutral curriculum standpoint, but it will say things like God made this beautifully. So it might mention that God was part of the creation process. In my personal homeschooling for my daughter. The amount of science and non-science is very curriculum dependent. There's no set standard for that. Some do use science to explain things like evolution and geological age, but others may not. Others may talk about a young earth, which is a Christian theory following Genesis, and that the earth was created in a literal 7 days, just so that we know what we're talking about. It may present one topic scientifically and another topic non-scientifically, focusing more on the religious. It does typically focus on Western studies and history and views things from a Christian viewpoint. Again, in my personal life, I do a neutral curriculum with my daughter, but I tend to supplement making sure things are very scientifically explained. That's just my personal homeschooling theory. I just happen to like that particular curriculum, and then I supplement as I feel necessary. So these are the 3 things that you're really looking you're trying to evaluate, is this a good direction to be going in my curriculum? If you are not religious, you're probably not really going to be looking at anything from here back. So you want to look for a secular curriculum that looks at things scientifically. If you're vaguely religious, you might consider a neutral curriculum. If you are religious, you might look at all three. Some secular curriculums are perfect for somebody who believes in very specific scientific theories, but also happens to be religious. You might just add in a religious component to your homeschooling. So saying that one is good for you because you are or aren't religious is not necessarily correct. You need to find that within your own homeschool journey and what works for your child. But these are the three categories you're really going to be looking at as you start to look at curriculums. Okay, that said, we have more curriculum types. We have 2 pages of these. Okay, school at home, structure approach that looks like school. Unschooling, child-led approach, where you kind of let the child explore the world around them. Classical, it's very focused on the trivium, which is the grammar, logic, rhetoric, so very Greek and Roman in understanding. Charlotte Mason, an approach centered on books, short lessons, telling back what was learned, nature studies. Montessori, very hands-on, self-paced. That might be more your STEM children. Okay. Waldorf emphasizes imagination, storytelling, art, music, movement. You don't really stand still much in Waldorf learning style. Eclectic, a flexible mix of all the methods, using whatever materials you choose at any given time. That's what I do. Okay. Online, learning is delivered primarily through digital lessons or virtual classes. So that's your time for learnings, your virtual programs. Okay. I created a selection of examples for each of these learning styles. They are labeled whether or not they are a religious or secular curriculum. So, school at home, that's Oak Meadow, is a secular. Sunlight would be your religious equivalent. Those are probably the 2 top ones in school at home. I've used Oak Meadow. Sunlight looks like a very good similar program that brings in religion. Unschooling is very field trips, hands-on learning like farming or cooking, apprenticeships, library explanations. Charlotte Mason, simply Charlotte Mason, they have their own curriculum. Build your own library would be your equivalent of a secular program. Classical conversations, the good and the beautiful are the 2 top religious curriculums in that category. Beast Academy and Story of the World would probably be your top classical secular programs. Montessori by Mom, and Schiller Learning, both are secular. I couldn't find the best example of a religious curriculum that I'm sure they're out there. Waldorf, you have Over the Meadow would be a good religious one. Waldorf Essentials is a good secular version of that. Eclectic, anything listed, Teachers Pay Teachers is a great resource. You can go to free versions of that. If you sell at Teachers Pay Teachers, you're required to provide at least 1 free thing in order to be allowed to sell. So everyone has a free thing on there. And then independent workbooks. And then online learning, you have your Time for Learning, Power Homeschool, Easy Peasy is something I use that's a religious equivalent. I've used Time for Learning and we also liked it. Okay? Okay, time requirements. Elementary school level, 180 days or 900 hours. Secondary level, which again is 7th grade plus 180 days, 990 hours. No one counts hours. I know of no homeschooler that counts hours. Everyone counts days. Okay? What counts as a day? Whatever you decide counts as a day. If they do a half an hour of reading, technically you can count that as a homeschooling day. If they go out and plow your farm, technically, as long as they learned something from it or got some good physical education in there, that counts as a homeschooling day. My own personal definition of what counts as a homeschooling day is they need to learn something from it. I do count our church services as a homeschool day as long as Emma can come home and tell me what they learned. If she can't tell me what they learned, she doesn't get to count it. We went to SeaWorld. She was able to identify every penguin in the penguin thing and read me one of the things off the penguin bulletins. Counted as a homeschooling day. She was able to give me 3 animal facts she didn't already know. That counted. Okay? So the law doesn't have any set guidance on what you should count as a homeschool day. So it's to you. That said, this is my very scientific way of keeping track of how many days we have homeschool. I actually got whiteboards printed for each of my kids with 180 days. So every day after school she finishes, Emma gets to cross off a day. So this is how I keep track. A lot of parents just print out 180 boxes and they just have a piece of paper and they mark it off. I found that my toddler kept taking it off the wall and ripping it. So I don't do that anymore. He can't break the whiteboard. At least he has not figured out how to reach it yet. Okay? But it doesn't need to be this crazy, I'm keeping track of every little thing I did in the state account as a homeschool day. Some parents do write down what they did that day, and they do it for themselves. The law doesn't require it. As long as you can somehow put a check mark, an X or something on 180 days, you've done your job. Okay? This is a generally accepted, how long is your homeschool day? For preschool, 15 to 30 minutes. Attention span's not there. Kindergarten, 30 to an hour. First, second grade, 45 to 1.5. Third to fourth, 1.5 to 3. Fifth to sixth, 2.5 to 3.5. Seventh to eighth, 3 to 4.5. High school, 3.5 to 6. This is generally accepted. And remember, this can include field trips. This can include independent reading time. Emma usually does between 1.5 hours to 2 hours, including her half an hour reading time. So she schools for about an hour, hour and 15 minutes, and then we take a long break. Once her brothers go for quiet time, she gets a half an hour of reading to herself without them jumping on her. Okay, so she does a half an hour of that, and then at the end of the day, she journals. Her journal is about 3 sentences long. This is generally accepted. It's not a legal requirement. This is for reference only for what is generally a good idea of what other homeschoolers do. This is not what the law says you have to do. Okay, standardized testing, what I'm sure many people are not happy to hear we have to do. We only have to do it 3 times in the life of our homeschoolers. 3rd grade, 5th grade, 8th grade, that goes by your child's age. Emma is doing a 3rd grade curriculum. She is 7. She is supposed to be in 2nd grade, which means I technically did not have to do standardized testing this year. I did anyway, and I brought it in case you wanted to see what it looked like. Emma has test anxiety. Okay? I do it annually with her because by the time she's done with her first section, she goes, this is really boring, not scary. So I have her do it annually as a reminder that this is boring, not scary. Okay? You don't need to do it. 3rd, 5th, 8th grade, results are included in your portfolio, not to the school district. Your evaluator will see them, your school district will not. I have no idea why they decided this was important because they don't get to look at them. It does not count for their school district. We need to do it anyway. If you're requesting your child take the statewide test administered in these grades, the school district must allow you to take it with them. That means if they are testing over a course of a week and you want them to sit in there in that classroom and do it with them, they have to legally allow you. I don't recommend it, but you can still do it. Okay? They must allow you to be in the school building, must allow the child in the school building to take it with their own students. Again, there's much better ways that we can standardize test them than having them sit for the week-long paper version of the Times tests. Which leads us to any other national approved test. Pennsylvania is legally required to provide a list. It's on their education website, or the next page. So these are all the approved national tests. California Achievement Test, Comprehensive Testing Program, Iowa Test of Basic Skills, Measure of Academic Progress, Metropolitan Achievement Test, Peabody Achievement Individual Test, Standard Achievement Test, Terra Nova, Woodcock, Johnson Revised Test, Woodcock, Johnson, I guess the original, and Wechsler Individual Achievement Test. Any of these are accepted in Pennsylvania. Again, the only person other than you and maybe your child, if you want to show them, seeing these tests are your evaluator. I did provide 2 examples of 2 very different tests. The California Achievement Test is what Emma did last week. It took her about 2 hours to do it. We did untimed online. I didn't need to do anything. It read her the examples and the directions, okay? So I didn't need to do anything other than ask her, are you sure you're done? Okay? It is available online or in paper. Online is scored immediately, and they send you a PDF with test results that you can just print and stick in your portfolio. It was $25, okay? There were about 10 seconds covering English and math. Other subjects are available, you don't need to do that. And there were between 25 to 40 questions per section. Again, it was untimed. She could have stopped in the middle, went to go eat lunch, and gone back to finish taking it. You can log out and log back in. Okay? This is what we think of when we think of standardized tests. It used to be the bubbles. Well, now you just click online. Okay? The Peabody Achievement Individual Test. This test is very good for a kid who does get test anxiety. You're not sitting down and filling anything out on paper. You're actually meeting with an adult who is able to provide this test, and it is a conversation. A lot of times they show pictures, they ask about your understanding of things. It is a full conversation. It is administered orally, one test taker at a time, usually in a quiet area, just one-on-one. I have talked to someone who leads this test. They said sometimes parents are in the room because the kid is nervous. Most of the time the parent is not in the room because they make the kid nervous. So that depends on your child. It takes between 1 and 2 hours to complete. The items are not timed at all. The child can take a break whenever they want. So, a lot of times you can take a second session. That would just be something that you discuss with the evaluator ahead of time. There are group Peabody Achievement individual testers in the area. I met one at the Bucksmont conference last year. I'm sure she will be back this year. But for a child who might have test anxiety or the computer gives them anxiety, or if they have like an ADHD and focusing is a problem, this might be a good option for your child. Emma is very like structured, black and white, so we do California Achievement for her. I'm looking at Peabody for my younger one who does have ADHD, who might not be able to sit on the computer without just playing with all the buttons. Go ahead.
For the standardized testing, is that something you have to decide at the start of the school year, or how much?
Before you hand in your evaluation.
Okay.
Emma, I normally do it. I did it last year just because, again, test anxiety. So for her, it's better to just do it every year so that it stays boring than otherwise. For last year, I did it in the beginning of May, and then I had my evaluation in the beginning of June. So you just need to have the results in your portfolio.
Do they need a certain score, or is it just that they take the
They
test?
took it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can show you, I have in here Emma's. I'll pass it around. Sorry, YouTube, you don't get to see this. So this is literally what my evaluator will say. So it's just a piece of paper, shows this is the date it was completed, she did it. I technically don't need to include it this year. I put it in the portfolio because I'm going to let you look through 2 of the portfolios. Alyssa brought her portfolio, and I have what I call my portfolio. Emma does a lot of things in workbooks, so I literally take the workbook and put it in the portfolio. So it looks a lot bigger and scarier than it actually is, but that's just because she's working out of a workbook. But we'll get to that. Yeah. So that's Emma's. I put that piece of paper in. If she was in 3rd grade, I met the requirement. Okay. Any other questions on, I can go back if people, this is on the Pennsylvania website if you need it. Questions?
Yeah. If you do the California one, how long can you keep coming in and doing and finishing it up?
I don't know because Emma took a break last year and it didn't give her any problems, but I think you have a year.
So you could just keep coming in and doing like 5 questions at a time?
I mean, you can. I would probably finish one section at a time just because I'd be afraid of it not completely saving.
Mm-hmm.
But I would do one section and go run around outside.
Okay.
Do the next section the next day. It has a very thorough information section on there that explains everything. I would read through that, but you can click out and go back.
Okay.
And then it only submits when you get to the last section. The last section is just, you've completed this test. Thank you for submitting. Now, I think that Alyssa always does the are less what we would think of as a standardized test. But yeah, I would just include that piece of paper. My evaluator would see it. I have an evaluation form here. You're going to see what they submit to the school district. It literally says, have they completed standardized testing in 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade? And they put a check mark, and that's what the school sees. They don't see this.
It just kind of says stuff like mathematic and computation. I do, from when I was in school, I remember that it was like fractions and stuff like that in 3rd grade, and if my kid isn't up to some of those levels, like he's very far advanced in language, and I've got no, he's gonna ace that easy, but some of the other stuff we're a little bit more behind on. Does that count badly? Like, should I just not even cover fractions at all, because right now we're just working on multiplication and division, and then when we get up into fractions, maybe next year it should be okay, but he won't know it in time for the test.
I would worry about it.
Okay.
The scores don't matter.
Okay.
What matters is did you do it. The law does not ask that they meet any particular standard with the test. It's did they take it. Okay? So that piece of paper, even if I could give Emma the 5th grade test, which she will fail. Okay? She cannot do 5th grade work. And it will show that she belongs in a 2nd or 3rd grade level if I give her the 5th grade one. Doesn't matter, she did it. Checked. Okay? So, don't look at Emma's scores on that paper necessarily. Look at it, says it was complete. That's what matters. Emma does not know fractions really yet. She can look at them, and if there is a piece of pie, like count the things, but she cannot do fractions yet. She did fine in the 3rd grade exam. I find more value in looking at where it says she should be placed, because the questions get harder. And so if you can do the easy questions but not the harder questions, it's like, okay, I think one of them says like 3.7. So that means that in that section, she would be on the 7th month of 3rd grade. That's where she was evaluated. So that's good for me, the parent, to know where she is. The school district doesn't see it, and the evaluator just sees you did. Okay?
Do they have practice ones that are free? Okay.
I don't know if they have free ones, but they do have practice ones. We don't practice. I don't find personally educational value in these exams. So we do it to get the check mark, and I make her do it yearly so that it never becomes a pressure point. Sammy, I don't know if I will do that with him annually, just because I don't know if he'll feel that pressure. But Emma feels perfectionism pressure, so as long as we keep it boring, then I've done my job, because this is not the end-all be-all of what your student is or what your student can do, and a lot of times it's not even fully indicative of what your student knows. But it is something we have to check off. Okay? Any other questions on standardized? Go ahead.
When you were doing them ahead of time for Emma, can you go in, even though it's for 3rd grade, were you able to go and have her do like a 1st grade level?
They don't have 1st grade California.
Right.
When she did it 1st grade, I had her take 2nd grade. And then last year I had her take 2nd grade.
Okay.
You can buy as many of these tests as you want. If you don't like the first one, you can buy another one and do it later in the year.
So they have them at different levels, though, not just the required state level?
No,
Okay.
they have them, because if you're in public school, you take this test every year from like 2nd grade on. So they have this from like 2nd to, I think they have it all the way through senior year of high school. But they have this every year. You can choose whether or not to do it or not. They do a practice test. They do have subject tests. As you get into an older grade, if you want to take the science standardized test, I guess you can choose to do that. You're not required to, but you can. But yes, you can take either a practice one, but as long as you take an actual real standardized test, you've met the requirement. This section of the law sounds like so much of this law sounds a lot scarier than it actually is. You're putting a check mark on a piece of paper saying that you did it. Knowing my child, knowing she gets text anxiety, the first year she was like shaking and crying. By section 2, she went, I'm really bored. I'm like, yeah, this is a really boring test, isn't it? She said, yeah. I said, okay, are you doing your best? She said, yeah. I said, okay, do you want peanut butter and jelly while you do the next section? She said, yeah. I said, okay, here's your PB&J, don't get it on mommy's computer. Okay? So now this year she was like, I really have to take it again. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you good with that? She's like, yeah, it's just boring. I'm like, perfect. Then I've done my job as a parent. We've done what we had to do and you're not scared of it. Again, the Peabody, if anyone's going to Bucksmont, you can get the lady's card. You can schedule an appointment with her, and that's a conversational test. That's nothing on paper. She has to write stuff on paper. You don't. He doesn't. She doesn't. Your child doesn't. But that might be a better option if your child needs more of a conversational approach. Emma is black and white. Like, give me a check mark. Like, give me choices. And so she just does well with the cat. We've probably all taken either the cat or the terracotta at some point in our lives. Any other questions on standardized testing? It's okay if there are. Again, this is probably one of the scarier sections of law. And really, it's a check mark. You have to tell yourself as a parent that this is not indicative of what my child has learned. Okay. The other scary section of law, the portfolio. I have 3 portfolios down front. I have Jenna's, I have Alyssa's, and I have our current one. They are all vastly different. Mine, I literally take the workbooks and tuck it in. Okay? By law, the following things need to be included. A book log, including book titles or reading materials used. I will show you my very, very complex book list as part of these slides. Samples of any writings, worksheets, workbooks, or creative materials used. We work out of a workbook. I literally put it in the portfolio. In grades 3, 5, and 8, the standardized testing results, that's that single piece of paper we just passed around. Okay? My very, very, very scientific and complex book reading list. These are books Emma has read. Okay? Now I file, we'll talk about filing our documents. I file my documents all at the same time, which means I turn in my evaluator form before June 30th, and I turn in my unsworn declaration all at the same time. That means I can start homeschooling on July 1st because the school district has everything, which means every rainy day during the summer we homeschool so that during nice days I don't have to homeschool. Okay? So since July 1st, these are books that Emma has read. She has not finished her Nancy Drew book. That's the book she currently reads for a half an hour every day. But you'll see that there are 4 Magic Treehouse books on there. It doesn't need to meet any particular requirement. If I sat down and read a book on like Dragons Love Tacos, which is something the boys enjoy reading, I can technically include it on here. Emma now sits down and reads those with her brothers. She sits down and they sit around her and they cuddle under her and she'll read them. I didn't include it because we do more than enough of her actual reading. I can include that. I can include that she reads the Bible on Sundays. I can include that she does readings as part of her science. I feel comfortable with these are the books that she has specifically read, so that is what I have personally included. But there are other things you can include. If they read fables, list every fable. Okay, Stone Soup. Okay. Are there any questions on book list requirements? Annual evaluation. I'll let you in on a secret. My mother is my evaluator. Okay? My mother was a New Jersey public school teacher before she retired and moved closer to her grandchildren. Okay? So she's going to fall under what we call an other category. We'll see that when we go to the next really long slide. Okay? So it's important that you find an evaluator that fits your style. What does that mean? If you are unschooling, you don't want my mother to evaluate you. My mother looks for worksheets. She looks to see that you did things throughout the year. She's looking for some sort of improvement. Not grade level, we'll talk about that, but improvement that you're working with your child. She's looking to see that work has been done. Okay? There are other homeschool evaluators that are unschooling based, that really take into consideration that they really ran this corner of the farm. evaluators evaluate differently, and the law is not all that strict on what that means. We'll go over exactly what the law requires. Okay? And that's those educational requirements. They're just looking to see if you did something. So again, if you unschool, you might want a more conversationally based evaluator. But if you classically school, then someone like my mom who does look at all the worksheets might be good for you. There are other evaluators that you create a private server, almost like a Discord or even a private Facebook page or a blog where only they and the parent has access. And you put on throughout the year what you do, and you just write blog posts and upload things, and they will throughout the year randomly check it, and then at the end of the year they will have a 15-minute conversation with the child, and then they will check everything off. There are evaluators who do that. My mother is not one of them. She makes me put together a full educational portfolio, even though they sometimes school at her house. Okay? So that works for us because we do a lot on paper. Okay? Okay, evaluator qualifications. A licensed clinical school psychologist or a teacher certified by the Commonwealth or by a non-public school teacher or administrator. Okay? If you have a teaching license in Pennsylvania, you can be an evaluator. You cannot evaluate your own child. Okay? If you want to be your own evaluator, you want to homeschool under that second option and be a private tutor. For a non-public school teacher administrator, they need at least 2 years of teaching experience in a PA public or non-public school within the last 10 years. And they have required experience at the elementary level to evaluate elementary students or the secondary level to evaluate secondary students. Luckily, my mom taught middle school, which means she taught 6th or 8th grade, which means she can evaluate both because 6th grade is the end of the elementary school and 7th grade starts secondary. So my mom could evaluate all of it. Okay, a certified teacher has experience at elementary school level or secondary level depending on what they're evaluating, right? They need to have somewhat of an experience in what they're looking at. Okay, this is what I homeschool under for my evaluator. At the request of the supervisor, me, persons with other qualifications may conduct the evaluation with prior consent of the district residence superintendent. I sent a letter, actually I sent an email to my superintendent and said, hey, Jane Cucolomello is a retired New Jersey teacher who has a license in elementary school and a license to teach science and mathematics at a middle school level. She's taught for X amount of years. She's retired and moved to Pennsylvania. Can I use her as my evaluator? I got back a, yeah, sure, that's fine. I said, do I need to do this every year? They said, no, you're good. I said, cool. That's in my CYA folder. That conversation on email is in my CYA folder. Okay? That's how I homeschool. Cannot be the supervisor or their spouse. Your husband cannot evaluate, but your mother, your cousin, your best friend, they can all evaluate under law. Okay? Okay, what do? The evaluation shall be based on an interview of the child and a review of the portfolio, required in clause number 1, and shall certify whether or not an appropriate education is occurring. It means they're going to sit down and talk to your kid and review their coursework and make sure they learned something, okay? They want to make sure there's really protection for your child, make sure that education's not being neglected. It doesn't say it in the law. However, one of the prime reasons we have an evaluator look at this stuff, who is probably a mandated reporter, is because they want to make sure no word I cannot say on YouTube that starts with an A and ends with a boos, okay, can happen, okay? They're making sure that your child is in a good situation, okay? They're making sure that, okay, well, we are seeing that education is happening, okay? They're not looking to see if you are at a grade level. They're not looking to see, oh, they went from being able to do no math to suddenly they're dividing fractions. They're not looking for that. They're looking to see that an education is occurring, that you're working with your child, that you're providing your child a way to become a successful member of society. Okay? When the evaluation is finished, the evaluator will provide you with a written evaluation, again, very big, long, one-page document to send to your local school district. It needs to be turned in to the superintendent by June 30th every year. I usually turn mine in around like June 22nd, and I turn it in along with next year's paperwork, so I only need to go once. I live 2 minutes from the school district, so I just walk it in and get my thing checked off. You can send it certified mail. Here's what a standard evaluation form might look like. It says student's name, age, supervisor, that's you, what school year it is. They check off that they interviewed your student. They had a 10-minute conversation. Sometimes it's a half an hour, depends on your evaluator. They reviewed the portfolio. Did they do their amount of hours or days? They were instructed in the required subjects. They demonstrated sustained progress in the overall program. They learned something. And then they did testing in grades 3, 5, and 8. I have interviewed the student's name and have reviewed the home education portfolio. The student has been instructed in the required subjects for the required time and has demonstrated sustained progress in the overall program. Therefore, I certify that an appropriate education is occurring. Okay? They sign. You turn in this piece of paper. That is your evaluation. Okay? Any questions on this? Cool. What the school district can and cannot do. We're dealing with this now. One of our members is currently in an argument with the school district because they want proof that they live where they live and they ask for mortgage documents. They are not allowed to ask for mortgage documents. I was on the phone yesterday dealing with this. Okay? They can receive the affidavit of unsworn declaration and they can receive the evaluation. That is their job. They receive things and they stick it in a file. They cannot approve your curriculum. Come to inspect your home. Do not let the man call HSLDA. Demand lesson plans. Do not give it to them. Ask for additional documents. Do not give it to them. Interview your child. Don't let them in your house. Call HSLDA. Okay? We'll go over what HSLDA is when I go over like additional support people. Okay? They cannot ask for more than the law requires. Okay? We already went over the one thing that is a little like twitchy about whether or not it's okay for them to ask or not, and that's the immunizations. Do not give them your mortgage documents. Okay? Okay, challenges and realities. Time management can be hard. Burnout is real. Record keeping is annoying. And finding your rhythm can take a while. Okay? These are all realities. If someone's making it look easy, it's because they have a good public face. We're tired. Okay? We all feel this. Okay? I don't know a single homeschooling mom that hasn't felt burnout. That hasn't felt, why do I have to keep this piece of paper? That hasn't felt, why can't I find something that works for my kid? This worked for child 1, it's not working for child 2, and forget child 3 who's running feral through the forest. Okay? Okay. It's not easy. Okay? Helpful resources. PA Department of Education, relatively helpful, mainly because they try to summarize the law. They don't always get it right, by the way, so double check them, because sometimes they accidentally put the wrong thing on their own website. So it's cool. They cite the law and then they forget to actually do the law. Homeschool Legal Defense Association, HSLDA. They're your friends. They have their issues like any other organization. However, for $125 a year, if your school district or anyone gives you problems, they will come defend you for free. Okay? You don't have to join them right away. I joined them because it's peace of mind. The parent I was talking about joined on Friday and marked that they had an emergency situation, was on the phone with an HSLDA attorney by Saturday or Sunday, and they got an email from the school district pushing today, and the attorney replied back within a half an hour. Okay? They are your friends, especially in PA, where school districts know there's a law but don't want to read it. Okay? I will tell you that they recently won a case because the school district decided not to push it anymore. They realized they were going to lose, and they have settled at least 3 cases in 3 different school districts because the schools realized that they are asking for too much. They are your friends. We are an HSLDA group, which means that I need to talk to you about them twice a year, and they also get us fun discounts like on the insurance we need for next year. Okay? But they are your friends. I've been an HSLDA member for, I think, 3 or 4 years now. They have really good attorneys, they're really good people, and they have a 24-hour hotline. Okay? Any questions?
I have a question about like withdrawal letters.
Okay.
Do they have to be submitted by a certain date or?
No, you can withdraw at any time. If you do withdraw, you want to include your homeschooling documents and that withdrawal letter to your school district. Okay? Some school districts do require that you not only send a letter to the superintendent, but you withdraw from the specific school. Normally that's not a problem. I would say follow their regulation because it just keeps paper where it needs to be, because sometimes the superintendent doesn't necessarily send everything over to the school. So just follow whatever procedures, but if their procedures are onerous, you can just send a letter right to the superintendent.
And you just have to do it the first time unless you enroll them in school.
So I will tell you, I never enrolled my child in this school district.
Right.
So I don't know, I think I skipped that slide. For when you need to file, for a new homeschooling parent with a child that is turning 6 before September 1st, so it's their first time, you need to file before the commencement of school. Okay, so if school starts on August 22nd, file before that. Okay, each year following, you need to submit your paperwork by August 1st. I always submit early because then I can start homeschooling on July 1st. As soon as your papers are either in the mail, so whatever date you send them certified mail or whatever date you drop them off, that is the first day you are allowed to homeschool. Unless you do it before July 1st, then you have to wait until July 1st to count it. Okay? If you decide to pull your child out in the middle of the year, which is the situation we're talking about here, with another member of our co-op, they withdrew on Friday and submitted the documents the same day. And they included their withdrawal form from that program to the school along with their homeschooling documents so that they can see what they had been doing all year and what they will be doing for the remainder of the year. So yes. Any other questions?
Can you do a special ed evaluation for the school district, but decline services if they qualify?
There are special evaluators who will evaluate under special ed. You wouldn't do it through the school district. Or are you talking about like a medical evaluation?
No, like students are evaluated in school to see if they qualify for getting services.
Okay. If you're gonna homeschool, I wouldn't bother getting them evaluated through the school district because they can get pushy about whether or not you accept what they think your child should accept. You can get evaluated with a third party and get them held outside of school. If they do have an IEP, there are special evaluators that are allowed to evaluate you with that IEP. They have a special education certificate. So you just need a specific evaluator that can evaluate a student that has an IEP. I look at it as on my own IEP. So again, my middle child, ADHD, I have to homeschool him differently than I homeschool Emma. I have private resources for him. I don't have an IEP because I'm lucky that one, I can handle his needs, but two, his needs aren't to the point where I need to involve like a school district in helping. But if they do have an IEP, you do need an evaluator who's certified in evaluating the IEP. Did I answer your question?
For the most part.
Okay.
So for the first time filers, because Leo just turned 6, so I only need to file the unsworn document, nothing else.
Yep, unsworn declaration. If you join HSLDA, you can print their form right off online. Okay, and I like that it has Legal Defense Association on the top because then it's like, if you have a problem with this, talk to my attorney.
How much did you say that was a year?
$125 a year, I think.
Do they give you like you know how you can use like a homeschool?
They give you a card.
Okay, and then you use that for like discounts and things?
I mean, you could.
Yeah.
I
I've
don't.
used my Mosaic one and gotten discounts.
Yeah, you can use your Mosaic ID and
Okay.
get discounts. Okay. Any other questions? Because
I just want to confirm that handing it off and having it signed, because our district did lose my neighbors, and they submitted just at the same
Have a
time as we
receipt.
did. Yeah,
Yeah.
not mailing it in though. She mailed hers in and they lost it.
yeah. So they could always send you certified mail, like we lost it. Can you send me a new one? And I would say, okay. Like
How many
paperwork-
more minutes do you have left? Just curious.
Shoot.
Awesome, okay.
I'm just answering questions.
Awesome.
So I would, if they sent me a request and it's like, we're so sorry, like it got lost in the mail, I have no problems. Like, here, have an email copy. So I try to keep that, because we're people, right? To me, yes, technically I don't need to do that, but we're all people, right? So you can just, if they're nice about it. Now, if they're mean about it, I'd call HSLDA. You get a lot more with honey than you do with vinegar. So I would say if it gets lost, one, you have your receipt. It's like, no, I did send it, so you're fine. Legally, you're fine. You did what you had to do. That wasn't your fault. But you know, it's like, okay, you need this piece of paper for a file here. But no, legally, you're fine as long as you have a receipt. If you send a certified mail, save that tag. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. If anything comes up, let me know. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.